Good to go.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metro Inner Assessment Panel meeting this morning. My name's Clayton Hyam. I'm the presiding member, and with me this morning on the panel is Mr. Lee O'Donoghue, the deputy presiding member, and Mr. John Syme, specialist member. And from Melville, we've got councillors Woodall and Lim. And when we get to the Belmont item, we'll have Mayor Rossi and Councillor Marks. I declare the meeting open at 9:33 and acknowledge the traditional owners and elders past and present of the land upon which we're meeting today. Just to note that we will be referring to electronic devices, so throughout the meeting, just to get technical information. The meeting is also being recorded and live streamed. No apologies this morning, no members on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the MIDAP website. Move to part B of the agenda, the City of South Perth item.
City of Melville.
City of Melville, it says City of South Perth.
That one.
Oh, no, okay. Just reading. Okay, sorry about that. I'm seeking a declaration of due consideration from members. Are all members familiar with the material before you today? Yes, thank you very much. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the Form 1 application. One or Form 2? Form 2 application. No Form 1 applications. So a Form 2 application for the Canning Beach Road item. We have some presenters. Presenters should stick to 3 minutes, although in this case, I've granted Mr. Hillam 5 minutes for his presentation. So we'll start with Mr. Hillam on Zoom. Over to you.
Good morning, DAP members, councillors and city officers. On behalf of Edge and Hillam Architects, I'll be briefly speaking to the points that this development proposal has sought to amend from the approved design. Going to slide 2. This part of the, this shows the rooftop terraces for towers 1, 2 and 3. This part of the proposal seeks to amend the existing approved rooftops of the towers to align with the other 2 towers where amendments have been made. The approved design currently has rooftop structures above the plant equipment with screening around this equipment. By repositioning the rooftop plant still within the screening area, we have been able to design a small rooftop terrace space for the level 15 penthouse residents for each towers. It's important to note that we've been able to provide this proposed rooftop amenity for the penthouse buyers without having any adverse visual impacts on the public. The reason we've redesigned these rooftops is due to the increased construction costs of recent years, putting significant pressure on sales prices and the viability of the project, and therefore we need to ensure we uphold those sales prices by providing even better amenity for the premium penthouse stock. Slide 3. As I mentioned before, level 13 of the Tower 3 has been proposed to have the floor plate increased to match the footprint of level 4, 12 beneath. Whilst acknowledging this increases the apartment yield by 2 and an internal area increase on this level, we are making this change to bring the architectural design in line with towers 1 and 2, whereby the step in the tower would now occur at level 14 for all towers, as opposed to Tower 3 existing step, which is at 13. So what we're aiming to do is, I guess, create consistency with this, what we consider to be a very minor additional increase in the smaller section of this tower. Slide 4. The primary change here is the 2 approved 2-storey penthouses have been split into a single-storey sub-penthouses, and the penthouses increasing the apartment yield by 2. This is, I guess, a response to what we've seen in the market conditions where the larger penthouse stock has been difficult to move and is impacting on the viability of the project. It's the same approach we took with apartments or towers 1 and 2 last year. And so this amendment seeks to bring the Tower 3 mix in line with those towers. We are seeking this change due to the current ongoing status of construction and housing market, where we continue to experience escalated costs. And as I mentioned before, don't believe that there's a significant market for the very large penthouse apartments given current pricing structures. This will provide better affordability for the apartments through these levels and I think greater accessibility generally to the public. Slide 5. I close by noting that when it comes to the community benefits provided within this development, Edge have quantitatively demonstrated to be providing well in excess of the requirements, even considering the amendments being sought in this application. A visual of this can be provided if of interest. On that point, I'll close and take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, David. We want to go through the rest of the presentations, then we'll come back to question time for all of you. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
Morning. We thank City staff and DAP members for their time. We understand from the City's assessment that the key issue and the reason for refusal relates to the amendments to Tower 3 where additional floor space is proposed. In this regard, we agree with the City's assessment that solar access is maintained for surrounding properties and that the development will not unduly impact on the local or regional road network. Therefore, these provisions are satisfied. As included in the City's RAR, we have quantified the extent of community benefits as a dollar figure and compared this against the required community benefits under the framework. This was requested by City staff. As a result, we can confirm that we have almost $9 million worth of additional community benefits than required. The remaining provision to be considered is outlined in the RAR under Desired Outcomes DO3. This largely relates to ensuring the interface between zones is managed to consider amenity impacts, that variation in built form and scale is proposed, and that consideration for elements 21 and 22, which I spoke to earlier, is undertaken. In this regard, we note that the additional new floor space within Tower 3 in this location is a total of 299 square metres. This represents a minor increase of approximately 0.87% additional floor space across the development. The City of the view that this minor increase in floor space is over and above the height bonus available under the centre plan being 15 stories and therefore does not meet the desired outcome. However, it should be noted that the increase in stories associated with the additional 299 square metres of floor space sits below the maximum height of the building and almost completely within the 15 stories that is able to be considered. Only 43 square metres additional floor space is located above 15 stories. Therefore, on this basis, we argue DO3 can be considered and that the development is consistent with the desired outcome, together with the remaining provisions required to be met for the use of the discretion available. Overall, it needs to be recognised that this is a large-scale development, and when viewed in this context, as the planning framework intends, the amendments to Tower 3 being the aspect at issue are minor and make a negligible impact to how the development is perceived from the surrounding area and properties. Importantly, the proposed minor amendments continue to provide variation in scale between the towers, but also the individual elements of those towers to provide articulation and visual interest as viewed from the public realm, as per DO3. It also includes less dwellings overall from that originally approved and since this time, and no additional car parking bays either. We therefore kindly request that the proposed minor amendments be approved on this basis and in accordance with the City's alternate recommendation for approval. Thank you. And we have obviously David here, myself and the wider project team to answer.
Thanks, Andrew. Panel members, questions of presenters? Yes, Councillor Woodall.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, just my question was around the changes to building heights, and if we could just have clarity on exactly what changes are proposed to the overall heights of the buildings, because I know that has been a significant issue in recent times.
So Councillor Woodall, and it might be something that the city can elaborate on as well, because you probably deserves a bit of that too. We understand that from the city's assessment that this tower, because of the changes to the roof structure that David was talking to, that's technically a 17th story, but it only relates to the fact that it now has a habitable terrace. So the roof structure itself, yes, it's changed, but largely they're all excluded from the definition of a story in height and metres, as we understand from the planning report and from our own assessment as well. But the key impacts that I was talking to in terms of additional floor space relates to the floors or stories as defined below that height of 17 stories. So it's actually the 14th, 15th and 16th stories and levels. Obviously is one below that in terms of what David was talking about, where that 299 square metres is at. And then it was anything above the 15th story, which is the 16th story I mentioned, was only 43 square metres additional. That relates to, you had the floor plates up, it relates to a change in how the balconies have been dealt with. So they've become floor space effectively, and the balcony's been slightly shifted together with the roof terrace above, because obviously you don't need as much balcony below.
So in effect, the actual height of the building hasn't changed at all.
That structure was already there, on the top of the roof. It's just that it's a definition under the structure plan, unfortunately.
Further questions? Yes, Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Presiding Chair. So I'm not sure where this question probably sits better with David or the presenter. I'm more thinking like what was presented. Tower 3 is actually now taller than what the existing proposal is, because I think I saw the dotted line in the prior presentation. So there's actually you're almost asking sort of like a height increase from this development process. And when I was reading through the documents, whenever you're asking for almost bonus heights, you almost need to provide community benefit, and understand that your assessment of community benefit is just 12 million, and if you assess it as a whole, you've already met your 3% baseline. But I feel that in the past,
Councillor Lim, what's your question, please?
I guess the question is why this bonus height did not attract more community benefit, because I feel that you have to assess each assessment separately. So I'm just wanting to know the logic behind that. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just reiterate that from our perspective, there's effectively, if you look at the crown of the building, there's no additional height in the building. So these changes are sort of contained underneath, I guess, what we would call the very top of the building. And the additional level is really just the mechanism that we allow the people on the top floor to access the roof. So in our view, there's no change to the height from a practical perspective, except that a portion of the building has become slightly higher underneath that maximum height limit. What I want to say about community benefit, and if you look at the community benefit provided by other developments in the area, I think that what we've done here in the nature and type of the community benefit, notwithstanding our valuation of $12 million, it far exceeds anything else that we've designed on any other project in Perth. And it's, I think, extremely practical, because I think if you look at the benefits provided in other examples, I think it's debatable as to whether they bring the same value to the city. So, for example, the resource centre on the corner of a building is allowing the city to potentially decommission existing facilities, which is a really substantial development benefit compared to, say, a resource room that's inside a building that's just like a smaller room that's not actually allowing the council to was to actually sort of eliminate any of their existing facilities. So I believe that these are not only of high value, but extremely practical and beneficial to this precinct.
Further questions of the presenters? No? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for that. Okay, thanks. We'll move to the city officers. Where are they? Yeah. Morning.
Morning.
Do you want to make a presentation or make some comments first and go? Yes, okay, thank you.
So I think Andrew and David spoke well to the amendment proposed, but I do have a quick presentation.
Share it themselves.
So everybody can see this.
Yes. Okay, so just to give a brief overview of the process, the assessment process and the recommendation that the city's given on this development. That's the subject site there. It's well under construction at the moment. I think it's possible to be completed towards the end of this year or early next year. As I said, Andrew has spoken well to the changes, but really the height is technically increasing across all the towers. Tower 1, 2, and 3, because of the enclosed roof terraces, is increasing the height from what was originally approved under previous amendments and the original approval. And then Tower 3, there's a bit of a reconfiguration happening there and a building out of Tower 3, essentially removing mezzanine level into dwellings and then the roof terrace above those penthouse dwellings. In terms of how we've assessed it, so we have given due regard to the draft structure plan currently with the WAPC. On balance, the city considers that assessment against the current structure plan is more relevant and makes more sense. The development is nearing completion and all previous approvals have happened under the current structure plan. And that's just a brief overview of what the applicant has proposed with the amendments. Tower 1 and 2, relatively minor with the roof terraces, and really the main changes are to Tower 3. In terms of the refusal recommendation, so there does exist opportunities for additional height in the structure plan area in this zone. For Tower 3, it's in a location of the structure plan that interfaces with a different zone. Basically, the desired outcomes is really looking to taper the intensity of development away from the centre, and it's done this through those interface zones, which caps the bonus height, and based on that, because of the building out of Tower 3, the additional height it presents, both in these stories, although technically under the definition in both meters and stories, the height is increased. The city considers that it's not really appropriate in terms of the interface with the H4 zone across the road, which is, generally speaking, that's a four-story zone. That explains our
refusal recommendation, but there is an alternative recommendation with that.
Thanks. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. Panel members, are there questions? Josh, I wonder if you could is there any additional loss of amenity as a result? This is to the locality. Any additional loss of amenity to the locality as a result of these minor changes?
In terms of shadow and the traffic impacts, no, that there isn't. The bulk and scale that's proposed for Tower 3, it is increasing that bulk and scale, the presence in that interface zone specifically. That's why the city believes it's not really consistent with its desired outcomes, which is looking to take the development away from the centre of the centre, so to speak, as the scale of development moves down. So on that regard, it's really Tower 3 that the city believes is not in accordance with that desired outcome. Solar access, traffic, there has been some level of community benefits which could be considered above and beyond, but it's really just that interface zone that the city doesn't consider as appropriate.
Through the chair, if I may elaborate further.
Yes, Peter.
Thank you, Peter Burrell, as the city's director of planning. We also need to be mindful of the sensitivities of the community in this locale and the scale of variations that have cumulatively been approved via JDAPs within the CBA-CP. And the fact that we have determined to assess this under the existing approved structure plan, we're looking to follow the rules that are set and are generally accepted for this structure plan. Interface and transition between zones under this structure plan is a considerable concern of the community and the council. So we've undertaken a studious assessment of this application against the current framework and its rules. So just understanding the context of our council, the community, and the acceptance of this development, and the fact that there is a rule book and that we're seeking to ensure that development accords with that rule book, and that's the expectation of our council and community in this part of the locality.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Yes, Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if you have the information, Peter, on how many amendments there have been to this development, because I recall at least a couple, and I'm just wondering, to what extent there's been a cumulative impact from each amendment that's been supported, changing the what's proposed.
Through the chair, our understanding is it's either the fourth or fifth amendment, and Mr. Cumming will be able to clarify that. I think it's important that each amendment is considered on its merits, and the city has considered those previous amendments and the impacts that they pose. This particular amendment does seek to vary the transition area that's shown on the plan. So this amendment, I think, is considered in isolation to the others, to be honest with you, Councillor Woodall. There isn't necessarily a cumulative impact. It's the modifications to Tower 3, primarily bulk and scale in that area that's identified under the structure plan to have a sensitive treatment to H4.
Further questions? Yes, Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Presiding Chair. Just have a question, maybe for the city. Do we have sort of like a visual of the, if any, additional shadowing caused by the height increase of Tower 3? Not 1 and 2, but like just Tower 3 alone. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Lim. So with the additional shadow, there is diagrams and figures in the applicant's submission for this amendment that show the shadowing impacts to the south across various different times. In terms of the shadow impacts, the city, doesn't believe that the additional shadow proposed by the amendment for Tower 3 is of concern in terms of amenity to adjoining properties, specifically directly south during midwinter. There's basically no additional shadow. There is something in the morning. That's shown in the applicant's figures in terms of their original application for this amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Further questions? No. Okay. Thank you to the officers. We'll move on to the item. There is a recommendation for refusal with a reason for refusal. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Woodall moving it and Councillor Lim seconding it. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, I'll speak to this briefly. To keep it quite simple, my concern is just around Tower 3. Towers 1 and 2, the changes I don't believe are significant, as has been outlined. Look, I don't have concerns in terms of the community benefits provided or the necessarily the changes to the mix of apartments and number of bedrooms, but my specific concern relates to the height of Tower 3. There's been over the years a number of concerns raised by the community around building heights and the definition of stories. The issue of a mezzanine has been an issue in the past, and I understand with this development there's rooftop space added, and the community have made it very clear that the overall height is an issue for them, and as a result the council, stemming from that in the past, did attempt to impose maximum bonus heights across the activity centre plan. That went to the WAPC, and they approved a 5-storey limit in areas that interface H4 and H8, specifically to address some of the community impacts and concerns. So yeah, with Towers 1 and 2, I think there's minimal impact, but with Tower 3, where it's directly interfacing H4, the proposal to essentially increase it from 15 to 17 stories will result in a loss of community support for developments like this, and ultimately will have a negative impact, I believe, on the community in that specific area. So for that reason, I support the officer recommendation for refusal of this amendment. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Presiding Chair. Nothing really to add from what have already been said by myself. I just think that we just have to admit that there is a height increase of Tower 3. And there is, I know the shadowing is minimal, but there is a level of community benefit that's taken away from this additional height. And I feel that we have to assess each development in isolation. So I do commend, the applicant for their for all the community benefits they've provided thus far. $12 million is a big number, and I do want them to approach all developments, with that amount of generosity. But I feel that we have already assessed the merits of the past developments based on that number. It's not something that it's like a prepaid system where we've sort of provide all the benefit and we can just draw down on that as we make development changes. That's the way I see it. So I think there should be a community benefit given back for what was taken away. That's why I choose this second refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Further speakers? Mr. Simon.
No, look, I've got a contrary view. I think these changes really are minor changes. I think it's easily recognised that anything on the towers 1 and 2 are really minor. I think there's no, and even with Tower 3, any changes there's illustrated by the applicant, there's no effective impact on the public realm. There's no overshadowing impact of any consequence. I think that any changes to the form, which are within the existing building envelope, the existing approved building envelope is what we're talking about. Any changes at level 14, 15 and 16, even on Tower 3, are really not appreciable at ground level. There is no vantage point that anybody, except from a long, long way away, that anybody is going to notice any change in that at all. So I can't see any point in splitting planning technical hairs on this. There really is nothing to be gained in doing that, I don't think. And I think I do recognise the public benefit. I do recognise that in the scheme, in comparative terms, the public benefit which is provided by the community benefit by the community facilities and so on, which are proposed already in this, are very substantial and quite unusual, I must say. And I think that we can apply those across the whole project. It would be inequitable not to do that. I think it is the case that it's a project which needs to be looked at in its entirety, and I think that this is just a minor change to something which is already a substantial project, and the public benefit is there. It's recognised. It's been valued. I think this could be approved and should be approved. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Look, I concur with those comments. I note that there is actually no height increase in that Tower 3, although on a technical level, it's argued that it's going from 15 to 17. I think it's going to be minor, and as Mr. Symes says, it's going to be very hard to pick this up, except from a fair way away. I would also like to make a comment about the community uses that have been provided. They are unusual. We don't very often see that such an extensive provision. So I think that should be taken into account. I don't think these minor changes really necessitate the need to provide more community benefit. I think it's sufficient has been provided. The changes to Towers 1 and 2 are also minor and easily supported. With Tower 3, I also note that there is not going to be any changes to overshadowing, and it's not going to have any impact on traffic or provision of car parking within the development. So I can't support a refusal of this. I will be supporting an alternative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I note the comments made by Councillor Woodall that there is a community concern, and we need to acknowledge that. But Councillor Wood also said it's really about the overall height is the issue. In this case, the overall height is not changing. It's, as has been said, it's a technicality. And while there might be a slight increase in bulk, I don't believe that there's any perceptible change likely to occur in the amenity impact on the local community. Therefore, I can't support a refusal, but I would be prepared to support an alternative recommendation for approval. Councillor Woodall, back to you as the mover.
Thank you. Just to wrap up, let's be very clear. Tower 3, the height is increasing by 3 metres. The number of stories is increasing by 2 metres. The intention with the amendment to the plan was to have a 5-storey maximum bonus height cap in that area. Now, I take on board that there are community benefits already provided. I agree, and they are significant. They're more significant than some of the other developments that we've seen in this area, particularly around the library potentially at Canning Bridge moving permanently into this development. So I accept that. There's no doubt about that. But there's already bonus stories provided, right? There's already a 15-storey allowance here. So they've already got the bonus stories. We're now talking about going beyond that, another 2 stories, another 3 metres. Now that might be technical. Some may consider it minor, but the community's been very clear that they do not see those things as minor. They want an absolute cap. There's no reason why this development could not be modified to remove a story of apartments and to make sure that it complies strictly with the plan and the height limits for Tower 3. Yes, that may impact the financials. It may make less profit, but ultimately it's possible. Yeah, that I'll leave it at that. This I think will negatively impact the community. That will be the perception of it, regardless of technical planning considerations. And it's just another example of the community being impacted by these development approvals and continual loss of support for more density in the area, which I think is very unfortunate.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. I'll now put the recommendation for refusal. All those in favour? Against? That's lost. I'll move to the alternative recommendation, which is in the RAR, and it needs a preamble. Proof. No, that's fine. Sorry, I'm seeking a mover for that. Lee, thank you, and a seconder. Thank you. Time. Over to you.
Yes, look, I haven't got anything further to add. Thank you. I've already voted on this matter.
John?
No, I've spoken on this matter. I think it's minor. I think it's worthwhile. I think it's clearly a development, and the height horse is bolted in this area. I think we should, that's it. This is what we have.
Yeah, okay. Speakers against or further speaker? No? Okay then. Thank you. I too am supportive of it. So no rebuttal of the debate. So I'll put that motion, the alternative motion, to approve. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you to councillors. Thank you to the officers. We'll move on to the next item, which is the City of Belmont. We'll wait for the councillors from the City of Belmont to get on screen.
Thank you.
That's the city. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, you just sort that confident.
It's not the conflict capture. The conflict capture.
Oh, you're not seeing me.
Welcome to the councillors. Mayor, well, Councillor Marks and Mayor Rossi. Goes through the formalities again. Are you familiar, or are we all familiar with the material before us? Belmont, let me know, please. Thank you. And are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Move to the item. Point 1. Post office and warehouse. We have a presenter, Mr. Ross Underwood. Ross, over there, mate.
Good morning, presiding member and panel members today. Thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of the proponent, Greco Global Proprietary Limited, and I'm joined by some of the project team here today, including Harry Bray and Reese Kelly, and also the architect Mark Baker, who are online. We are pleased to receive the recommendation. The proposal that we put forward today has been designed from the outset to work around the planning framework that's in place, and we've included from day one small business enterprise officers 3 levels along the Great Eastern Highway frontage development. That's designed to achieve the planning objectives towards getting more interactive uses along the highway frontage. That being said, we have a recommendation for approval. We're generally comfortable with the conditions that are proposed, with a couple of minor changes that I mentioned in the presentation summary that has been provided. First of those are changes to conditions 6 and 7 that relate to public art, and we don't have an issue with the public art, but rather the timing around the delivery of that particular requirement. What we've advised the city's officers is that the process that we would undergo in providing public art includes the commissioning of a public art consultant. We generally go out for tender for 3 artists and go through a project team selection process to decide on preferred artist, but then be a design process to be undergone. The city also has, and this is set out in advice note B, process for running it by the city's public art panel before approval by the city's coordinator. There's also the detailed design process, which, depending on if there are, say, for example, projections coming out from the wall of the building, it may require engineers' input to ensure that whatever process is structurally sound. So all that being said, the long and short is that there's a period of time that we go through, and this condition as imposed would require all that to be done prior to the issue of the building permit. And that would put public art on probably the critical path. And we don't think it's appropriate to rush the artistic design process. What we've proposed and what we've sought approval for on other cases, including a development in Safety Bay that was received approval from earlier this year, is that the public art is designed and installed prior to the commencement of the development, which then provides more breathing space for all that process to be undergone. The long and the short is that we don't particularly want to rush the process, and there's no requirement in the city's local planning policy on public art to do so. The other change that we're seeking is in relation to construction traffic management. And there are in fact 3 conditions that all relate to this. There is condition 8, part G, that requires construction management plan to address traffic, and condition 33 that requires all works within the highway to require main roads approval. On top of that, there's also a condition that effectively cuts across both of them and requires an additional layer, another traffic to be approved by main roads. And setting aside the ambulatory nature of that condition, we just don't think there's a need for that second condition. And Main Roads hasn't requested it in their referral response. Look, all that being said, they are minor changes. We think they're quite reasonable when we seek the panel's endorsement of those changes and approval to the development. Myself and the project team would be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Questions of the presenter? Oh, hang on. Mayor Marks. Sorry. Mayor Rossi, I beg your pardon.
That's okay. Oh.
Mayor Marks.
All right. I'm just wondering, the applicant refers to a 2009 study. Is there no more recent study than 2000 on page 21?
No, unfortunately not. It was commissioned by the Self-Storage Association of Australasia and was an Australia-wide study that was done at the time. What we've proposed is a development that's in line with that. There is a trend more towards 24-hour operations, which we haven't proposed here, and being unmanned type facilities. This isn't one of those. This is more in line with a more traditional style self-storage facility, and so those studies still stand.
Thank you.
Further questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Ross. We'll move to the officers. Brandon?
Presiding members and good morning DAP members. Before I move on to receiving questions, I'll probably speak briefly to the modifications that the applicant put forward. So firstly, I'll get the proposed modifications to condition 7 and deletion of condition 9 out of the way first. The deletion of condition 9 regarding lodgement of the traffic management plan, where we have no opposition to the deletion of that condition. And condition 7 regarding modifications for the installation of the public artwork prior to occupation of development, we also have no opposition to or objection to that change. Now I'll move to condition 6. Perhaps it's beneficial for us to provide the background or the process in which the city deals with that particular condition. So firstly, having prior to lodging an application for a building permit, that gives essentially the city a trigger point for the applicant to at least come up with a public art concept, because what often happens with public art, and there's being no exception to that, is they've not provided what exactly the type of public art that they're looking to do. And in some instances, we do get certain public art where they incorporate elements of the building, and that's where there's merits for that to be considered prior to the application of building permit, because it does affect element of the building. Now, I'm not saying that that's what the applicant's doing for this. We don't know at this stage. And how we would, from a process perspective, how we would deal with this condition is if the applicant's able to provide even just a public art concept early, it at least is at the front of their mind. And we're certainly happy to, for the building application to progress prior to the public art strategy or concept being approved by our public art panel. We understand that that's a long process, and we have certainly in the past given some leeway to applicants to progress their building permit without necessarily having the public art strategy being finally approved.
Okay, thank you.
I'm ready for questions, sorry.
Questions of the presenter? Yes.
Yeah, can I just follow up on that? So this condition 6 is looking for you to approve an artist, and that's all. So if you say, here's the artist, they've met their condition. It doesn't even ask for a concept particularly.
Yeah, well, by the reading of the condition, yes, and typically what we've, thanks to a lot of the applicants who took those opportunities to often provide a concept along with the artist, and that gives us clarity on what it is that they.
Yeah, but it's a fairly general concept. It's not it hasn't gone through any art committee process or anything like that. Right.
Further questions? Yes, Mayor Rossi.
I'm just wondering, I'm concerned about on page 21, it talks about we have a 65 bay shortfall, knowing that people may come with trailers, so that will be 2 bays needed, depending on how they park and all that. So I'm just wondering, is the city comfortable knowing that we have 65 bay shortfall, and will this be a precedent anywhere else along Grayson Highway? It's such a great number. The development's fine, but it's just the amount of bays was short.
Yeah, so perhaps I'll touch on the precedent part. So in terms of the number of the parking ratio that we've worked out, it doesn't exceed, I suppose, the amount of shortfall that was approved. I believe I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was for a keep safe facility, which is along Grayson Highway. So in terms of the parking ratio that we've worked out based on this shortfall, it is lower than that. So this won't set a precedent in that regard. But that being said, there are there is a condition requiring the applicant to provide a parking management plan to basically demonstrate how the office component as well as the warehouse component operate. So that would provide us more certainty and detail that can be properly managed.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move to the item. Recommendation for approval with conditions. Is there a mover for that? Seeking a mover and a seconder.
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Marks, seconder. John, Simon, thank you. Councillor Marks.
Do you wish to include the 2 changes to the condition?
No, I think we'll treat those as amendments.
Okay.
Councillor.
Okay. Just quickly to say that I'm disappointed that we have another warehouse going up on Great Eastern Highway. We've tried very hard to move warehouses away from Great Eastern Highway, but here's another one. At least they've made an effort to produce a facade of some description that suits the highway and fits in with the rest of the highway. So in that respect, I say congratulations. As far as the parking goes, which Councillor Rossi or Mayor Rossi is bringing up, I'm worried about this ratio that they're all using. I have my doubts about what will happen, but we have a report of what is expected or what is deemed to be reasonable for it. The officers have accepted that. I have no reason not to accept that, I guess, at the moment. I'm waiting to see what happens. What does worry me is if it is wrong and they haven't got it right, the traffic that's involved is going right around the building. You're likely to have quite a confusion of traffic that can't go anywhere and sort of stuck around the outside of the building. And it's not as if you're going to a parking bay and you suddenly discover you haven't got any parking, you just continue on down the street. These people are going to be stuck around the outside of the building. And that's going to be an interesting situation. Other than that, I accept what is here, and I wait for point 6 and 7 and 6, 7, 9 and 13 to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I move to Mr. Simon, seconder, and he might like to address some of those amendments.
Yeah, look, as an overall project, it's an interesting one. I guess more self-storage is one of the offshoots of more apartments, really, because people need space to put stuff. That is on Great Eastern Highway. I suppose it's a logical location for it. I will move a couple of amendments. First of all, the easy one, I'll move to delete condition 9.
I'll take them separately then.
Yeah, 2 separately.
Okay. Seconder for deletion of, yes, Leo Donoghue. Is there any discussion on that? Thought so. All in favour of the deletion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, John.
I've moved the amendment to condition 7.
Just want to read that out, John.
Which would replace the word constructed with installed prior to occupation of the development.
Okay.
What are we doing exactly? Sorry, could you repeat that, Mr. Simon?
It's the amendment to condition 7 as requested by the applicant, which is replacing the word constructed with installed prior to occupation of the development. So the full condition would read: the approved public art concept strategy shall be thereafter implemented and the artwork installed prior to the occupation of the development and maintained for the life of the development to the satisfaction of the city.
Okay, I seek a seconder for that one. Leo Donahue, thank you. Is there any discussion on that one? No, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Floor still with you, John.
Look, I did consider condition 6, but on the information coming from city officers, I think that condition 6 is a reasonable one. So I want us to change that.
Thank you. Is that it from you? Okay, thank you. Further speakers?
I'll speak on
Yes.
the item briefly. Look, I understand, appreciate the concerns of the councillor about Great Eastern Highway and wanting to see improvements, but I think this proposal has been well designed, and I think it's a use that you generally do find along there. But I do note your concerns about Great Eastern Highway. I know that's been an issue for many years. I also concur. I don't think that condition 6 needs to be changed. And I'm grateful for the clarification that it's looking for the artist, not necessarily the concept. I mean, if it was a concept, I would be worried. It would be a rush thing. So, yes, overall, this fits nicely into the planning framework, so I'm going to be supportive of it.
Thank you. Further speakers? No. Yes, I'm supportive of it as well, particularly with the amendments that have been made. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Marks to wind up the debate.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Look, I too support 6, and I think that's a good move. And generally, I expect or accept what's been put here. The officers wish to approve it. I agree with them, and I don't think there's much more to be said.
Right, thank you for that. I'll now put the recommendation for approval as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the next item. Is item 3.2, the proposed office, education establishment and cafe. Mr. Dawkins.
I have the
yes.
Answer questions.
Yes, and 3 minutes, Mr. Dawkins. Up to you, Tim.
Good morning, panel members and the ones online. Thank you very much for your consideration of the item. My name is Tim Dawkins. I'm a town planner at Urbis, and I have with me Alfie from St John. Yep. No longer Ambeds, but St John, who run the ambulances in Perth, and Bianca from Plus Architects. I thought today would be a quick one because we're after a Form 2 and a storage thing, but it was a bit longer than I thought. That's okay because it was actually quite informative because we got to talk about the public art condition. Which I think we haven't requested, but I think we have to seek the same treatment because public art is a consideration of this development as well. $200,000 isn't a small amount for an organisation, but it's something we're doing, not contesting, but just giving us our time to get the architect on board. It's also informative to hear Councillor Mark's views on Great Eastern Highway, and we think we are providing a strong positive relationship back to Great Eastern Highway and the Pindam building. Love it or hate it, it's gone now. Most people hate it, and this building is going to take its place in a far better form. So quickly on the applicant, St John runs all the ambulances in the state. They're the biggest, I think they have the biggest geographical provision of ambulances in the world, I'm told. And they have been running for 129 years, not-for-profit organisation, 4,000 volunteers, 2,000 staff. They have 173 regional premises and 66 metro premises, and this is the central nervous centre for all of that. This is how we run our not-for-profit organisation, which actually saves lives all around the country, all around the state. The proposal itself is supported, and the conditions, apart from the public art one, we have no contention with other than conditions 19 and 20, which are problematic from a longevity point of view and an operational point of view. Condition 19 seeks to limit the number of staff, number of people being trained on site. The site has 2 functions, and happy to answer any questions through Alfie or myself or Bianca on the actual operations of the site. But it's part of a St John operations, which have 3 different premises all clustered around Belmont. And although again I can't can't guarantee it's the fact. The biggest employer, if not or one of the biggest employers in the city of Belmont, having 200 staff on site. Actually, but it's a big contributor to Belmont. The problem is the car parking conditions. Yes, we think that the training will have a maximum utilisation of 100 students and people attending, but we can't guarantee that. We actually think that the original condition from Main Roads was to 138 staff, which we were more comfortable with. We prefer not to exist at all, but to limit it to 100 staff, training people at any one time is really problematic for the ability for St John to do their work they do on site. They already do those things in the area and they are comfortable managing the staff and the visitors to the site. There's 185 bays on site. There's 11 training rooms and 2,850 square metres of office space. And we think that limiting the number of office numbers, number of people attending the office is not only wrong, it's also really difficult to enforce. And how do we manage that? This is about running an organisation. So they can manage people coming to the site. They can make it very clear in your induction if you get a car bay or not. It's not 1990 anymore. You don't get a car park for every single employee. We want to see things change along Grayson Highway. And we think this is making a positive contribution. It's got the right number of car bays to support the office use, and it will start to provide other things like modal shift, other ways of catching public transport, and not just an expectation that you get to car bay and everyone does that. It is a not-for-profit. Staff retention and attraction is an issue. Alfie's team are going around the world to try and find more paramedics to do the life-saving services they do. They need to be understand how they run the stuff, and parking is a value proposition for staff, and they're not going to undersupply car parking, so they know the needs of what they need to do to be able to attract the staff. But be able to cap the staff on the site when they're spending $20 million on a new facility is problematic because they don't have any certainty in the future as to how they can run that premises. And I'm pretty sure we're all confident over time car parking has become more and more something that the ratios get lower and lower. So with that, happy to answer any questions and seek support for the approval subject to the conditions changing.
So, sorry, to clarify, you're seeking conditions 19 and 20 to be deleted?
Correct. Okay. And number, I think it is, to talk about prior to site commencement, the public artist being same minutes of previous.
And you don't have Jacob Martin here with you today.
I don't.
Assume that his written submission is part of your submission.
It's correct, yeah. He's in towards that building.
Is he?
Questions of the presenters? Yes, Mayor Rossi.
Just one question. Would this development relieve pressure on LePage Street where your training part of your training is at the moment?
Excuse me. No, it's a totally different training. LePage is going to be the first aid training, mental health training, and Cert 4 training, where 191 is going to be purely for paramedics.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I'll wait for the officers.
Okay. Jim, where did the 100 come from then?
That was what we said in that traffic report. That's our expectation. Yeah, okay. So there's a bit of confusion because if you just mathematically look at 11 training rooms, it can have, I think, something like Jacob says in his report, 200 people in attendance. We don't think that number's going to get there. We think it is probably 100, but it's just a limitation moving forward that we can't accept. 138 is the number which Main Roads had said that they're comfortable with. So that was kind of what we said as a very low watermark we'd accept, but we actually think that's problematic to invest into this thing without the certainty now to have the longevity of it, the condition together. So
you'd be happy with the Main Roads figure of 138?
I don't think happy is the right word, but it's far better than 100. I think we don't think in the foreseeable future 138 people will be on the site in that capacity. So it would be something that would have to kick the can down the road, but it is an issue with final investment decisions and things like that that the board might struggle with.
Do we know on what basis Main Roads at 138?
Because that was in the traffic report, I think. That might be a question for the elected.
I think that's something that the officers can perhaps.
Okay.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Further questions of the presenters?
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, just to continue on what you asked him, he is happy for 138, which of course would be what Main Roads put forward, and he wishes to completely do away with the idea of the 198 that the officers have put forward for the number of staff. So if we were to change that to 138 and dismiss the other one, we've got a reasonable solution. We have got 59 bays sitting there as an excess, so we've definitely got the number of bays online to do it. The other question to me that possibly needs to be asked is that if we left it as it was, and when the officer situation or the attendees grew, you then applied to have this lifted, would that be an acceptable position?
No, because $20 million for St John is not something they can just put at risk. That the certainty that gives them, the uncertainty that gives as a trailing liability would just be very difficult for them to accept, because they don't know how big the premise is going to be. It's a 3-story building. It was originally proposed as a 4-story building. It's come back. It's not as big as we had previously proposed. The number of staff isn't dramatically going to change. The way the workstations work and how it's laid out it's just an unnecessary thing, and there's also a really impractical thing to manage. In my business, for instance, we have 55 people and 45 workstations, and the office is really more than 3/4 full. Like, the world's changing. No one expects a car parking bay, but it's just something that is just going to make it really difficult to manage, and will be part of the St John's process to.
Yeah, we have to sort of be mindful about putting sort of caps. If the state government was to turn around and say, well, we need a certain amount of paramedics by this particular date to serve the community, and we can't sort of address that because we don't have the facilities or we don't have the parking for it, say, for example, it's going to be, we're capped. It's going to be quite problematic. And we just can't sort of pigeonhole ourselves where we just can't grow, or we can't sort of, fill the needs of the community, basically.
It's plain to me that you've made an excess of parking with the idea that you're not certain of what's happening, just listening to what's been said there. And I accept that you've got 59 bays up your sleeve to work around. It's just a matter of which way you want to do it, whether you leave it open and just hope for the best, or you leave it as it is, and when it becomes obvious that you may need more car parking or things are going to get beyond it, you apply to do it. But I'm interested to see what the officers have got to say on that.
It's more likely that we apply for some sort of structured car parking if it's a problem, because to be honest, it's not going to manifest itself in a problem for Belmont. It's going to manifest itself in a problem for St John to be able to attract employees. So if employees simply refuse to attend and work here without a car bay, they'll find a way to provide them. We're confident we don't need to, but it's something that we can't have the limitation on the staff being able to attend the site, because it's A, a management problem, but B, a growth problem.
How do your staff and students arrive now? Do we know what proportion come in public transport?
At 189 next door, that they're currently utilising that for their college training, and I don't believe there's any student parking there.
There isn't, no, they actually, so look, we're quite, I won't say fortunate, but we've got quite a few sites on Great Eastern Highway. Most of them we're leasing, and as I say, rent money is dead money, so that's why we're trying to actually build this facility so we can really push our leases. Having said that, we understand when it comes to parking, it's extremely difficult, and one of our things is about, being sort of the best place to work. So unfortunately for St John, it's been around for 129 years. One of our core values was to be conservative in finance. But I remember when Kevin, the new CEO, started, I told him, look, we've been conservative for way too long. Everything's quite run down. It's not up to scratch. And unfortunately, we have to actually spend the funds to build these new facilities and bring everything up. But we just don't have endless amounts of money. So we can only do certain things at certain times. So when it comes to parking, we would love to build a multi-story car park, say, for example, but we just can't afford it. So we have to actually suit these particular needs for this point, and then we have to look for the next ones. But people do catch buses, come together. We do have a lot of sort of families and couples that work together, and we just manage everything we can.
And St John's also invested in end of trips that they're building up the road, which has been well utilised now.
Yeah. So we're trying to encourage people to ride their bikes, e-scooters, all those sorts of things. So
we have no number on. Is it a big number, or most people, or a few?
I don't have specific numbers of how many people do that, no.
So is it possible then to get rid of the caps and deal with the issues that seem to be around this? Might be the number of vehicles coming in and out of the site, and who's got parking, who hasn't got parking, through a parking and operational management plan.
That would be our expectation with normally the way these things would be done.
The current conditions don't require a parking management plan, but they could, couldn't they?
Yeah, that'd be, and that's could be part of induction. So it's about people knowing whether or not they get a car park when training is occurring, when it's not occurring. So you're not turning up to work and someone's parked in your bay or whatever.
Where the bus stop is.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a green travel plan is something that we'd so that's something we haven't suggested. We're happy to accept because St John would do that as a matter of course. It's first part of it.
All right, further questions of the presenters? No, thanks for that. We'll move to the officers again.
Clayton, I'll take this one. Sorry,
Okay.
Senior Planner.
Okay.
So yeah, just a brief opening statement on this one. So the city supports the application for the Office and Education Establishment, as well as St John expanding their services within the city and along this portion of Great Eastern Highway. I'll talk briefly on condition 19 and 20 and why the city has put those forward, starting with condition 19. The office and staff numbers, those employee numbers were unknown, which the applicant has mentioned there. So the city used the car parking rates, 1 space per 30 metres squared, to calculate the car parking requirement for the office portion. The city recommended the condition limiting maximum number of staff on site at any one time to ensure that there would be enough parking for staff attending the site. The 198 staff limit was calculated using the bays from that calculation of 1 space per 30 metres squared, in addition to the surplus space that was also available. The city is open to revising staff numbers as a part of a future modification, where the applicant has more certainty in terms of staff numbers and they can provide more details like they mentioned briefly in their presentation. Regarding condition 20, so this condition originally came from Main Roads, which was providing 38 student maximum. The applicant put forward to us that there would be 100 students, therefore the city thought it appropriate to put the maximum at 100 students based on what the applicant had provided. Again, the city would be open to modification in the future if things change, like the applicant said in their presentation, when there's more certainty on numbers and more details can be provided. I know towards the end there it was mentioned about a potential for a management plan condition to be included. We feel that if the DAP is in the opinion to not go forward with those 2 conditions, then it would be appropriate to have perhaps a condition to that and another condition about its implementation. That would be satisfied with that.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Nick. Questions?
First of all, could I ask that one of you prepare a condition for a parking management plan, please?
Green travel.
However it goes. My question really is, in an environment where the strategic planning system is seeking mode shift to public transport, on what basis should we be, what do you think of the argument that there is no logic in that environment to linking numbers of staff and numbers of students to parking ratios? Now, there's already parking ratios which are calculated on floor area and all sorts of things like that. But in this environment, particularly when strategically at a state government level, there's a clear need to mode shift, on what basis or how much weight should we give to that linking of student numbers and staff numbers to parking, because they are not necessarily connected?
Oh.
Thanks for the question, through the chair. So this application was put to us with compliant parking rates based on the office. So the city thought it was appropriate to tie those rates to maximum staff numbers, and that way it's certain that there would be parking available for the staff. So yeah, we thought it was appropriate to tie the two together.
Can I, just a follow-up question, what does it matter if staff numbers increase to say to 220, parking's not going to change?
Thank you, through the chair. I guess that's where, you know, we've put this condition forward, and if we had more details in terms of what may be happening in the future, if the staff numbers were to increase to that amount, then we could consider changing the condition to more appropriate number.
I don't understand what the consequences of that are in a practical sense. Not all, if there's only that many parking bays, then only that many people can park there. The rest have to do something else.
You're going to go out in the roads.
Yeah, through the chair, I could perhaps chip in on this one. That's where that pretty much scenario pretty much speaks to the city's concern, because this site does also have access to Barker Street at the rear, and if there's no parking available on site, say because of the increase in number of staff and say students who have choose to drive there and realize they don't have parking, or they know upfront they don't have parking bags but decide to still drive, then I suppose Barker Street could be, you know, would suffer from the consequences of overfilled parking. That's the concern.
Is Barker Street time limited parking?
No.
Could be.
All right, further questions of the officers? You're happy with the changes to the condition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it changes
Public
to the
Public art.
of the
I think.
Yeah.
So Marks, did you?
Just quickly, would the officers be happy with a change of 20 to condition 20, whereby we would make it 138 students, and then delete the staff one, which, you know, it's not likely we're going to get a great heap of staff suddenly appear on the scene unless they've made a dreadful mistake on how many they're actually going to employ, but I would doubt that. Would you be happy with 138 students and 19 removed, the condition 19 removed?
We perhaps feel that if we were to keep either of the question because the condition, sorry, because the numbers somewhat speak to each other, so it's either going to be keeping both or removing both. Now, perhaps this was a detail that we didn't have and appreciate the applicant providing that background detail and why they were opposed to the limitation of staff and student numbers, and we certainly hear and note that. And in terms of deletion of either condition 19, 20, our preference perhaps would be, if it's a deletion of both, but replacement with a parking and operational management plan condition. That way it provides the city officers the ability to, I suppose, lock in and approve parking and operational management plan and able to enforce on it if they don't follow set management plan.
So you're happy to have it?
That would be, sorry, Councillor Marks, yeah.
Sorry, I'll just very quickly. So what you're saying is you're happy to delete 19 and 20, but put some more into your parking plan that you're putting up. Okay, righto. Thank you.
Which I presume could include reference to parking in the side streets for staff and
that would be the essence of it, wouldn't it? It would be if you come
not
to the
parking.
site.
Yeah. So the information from the gentleman from St. John gave us pretty good insight, because at the moment I believe that they don't have a hard statistics on how many students take public transport. There's probably a portion, And hence we see there's probably benefit in the parking and operational management plan for them to perhaps dive deeper into that portion.
All right, thanks, Brendan.
There's plenty of public transport there.
There's bus, high frequency bus routes along roads and highways.
All right, no further questions of staff. Thank you. Thanks, guys. We'll move on to the item, recommendation for approval with conditions. I'm going to seek a mover and a second for the published recommendation at this stage, and we'll go to any amendments later. Is there
I'll move.
Donahue and the seconder for that?
No, I'll second it.
Councillor Marks, thank you. All right.
Look, yeah, I think this is a very approvable proposal. Obviously, it serves an important community need. I think that it has been well thought out. I think that we've got to a point where we can accept a parking management plan in lieu of conditions 19 and 20, but that's something that we'll deal with after. Yeah, I haven't got any further comments on that.
Councillor Marks.
I haven't really got much to say, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a good proposal. It fits in well on Great Eastern Highway, I would suggest, and I'm pretty happy with it. There are 59 parking bays in excess, which to me means that they've left a lot of room for who's going to park where and what's going to happen. And probably the best idea is exactly as we've heard from Leo Donahue, that we should leave it up to the a parking proposal for it. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Further speakers, Mr. Syme.
Yes, look, this is a very good development. It's an essential service. I think we should give it every support we can. I think my view is, as I sort of alluded to before, in an environment where two things. First of all, this is a central site in the metropolitan area. We really need to maximise the land use efficiency in this, and that means putting as many staff and students in an activity there as we reasonably can. Secondly, we're in an environment where at every strategic level there is a need to change mode shift towards public transport, and I think that decoupling the staff numbers and student numbers away from parking, reasonable parking provision, really is required in this case. I do acknowledge that there would be some need to manage the consequences of that, and in my view is a parking management plan would provide that, and it would actually be much more manageable in terms of the relationship between the city and the applicant, because there is a specific plan to refer to if things need to be attended to, rather than doing a staff count or doing a student count or something like that. That would be very difficult to manage. I therefore move an amendment on the completion of conditions 19 and 20 and the replacement of them with a parking management plan condition, which hopefully we will get some words of right now.
So the wording that we have so we've got replacing with two conditions. So the first condition would be parking and operational management plan shall be approved by the City of Belmont prior to the lodgement of a building permit. The parking management plan shall be amended from time to time as required and implemented to the satisfaction of the city to reflect any changes to staff numbers, student numbers, operational changes, and demand for parking bays by the land users. That's the first condition.
Yeah, okay.
And then the second the second replacement condition is prior to occupation or use of the development, the approved parking management plan shall be implemented and thereafter complied with by the landowner for the life of the development.
So I move deletion of existing conditions 19 and 20 and replacement with those two conditions.
A new 19 and 20. Okay, can I have a seconder for that? Yes, Lee, thank you. Could you say any more on that?
I think I've said everything.
Lee, seconded. Is
Seven
there,
up as well.
is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? No. Okay, I'll put the proposed amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The floor's still with you, John.
I think that's it. Good, very good development. I wish it did extremely well.
Was there anything in the art condition? I slightly different to the previous one, so
Yeah, it is different.
it's an issue.
No.
So, all right, further speakers. I'm more than happy to support this proposal. It's well designed, and I think with those changes, I think it operationally it'll work very well. Further speakers? Yes, Mayor Rossi.
Yes, I'm happy to support it, but I am concerned about the uncoupling and whatever you want to call it between the two. But I will support the plan, but I'm concerned about the impact if it does go wrong, because the students are going to come from all over Perth. They're not going to use public transport, or a small group will use public transport. They will rely on car base. So, but I look towards the officers to ensure this works. Thank you.
Thank you. No further speakers. I'll go back to the mover, Lee. Any
No
closing
further
comment?
comment.
Okay.
End of debate.
I'll put the motion as amended. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Just to finish off the meeting. There were no Form 2 for Belmont. No Section 31s. Noting any SAT matters there. No general business, I gather. No, I'll close the meeting at 10:59. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.